Hello and welcome. My name is Paul Sear from paulsear.com. This is our first episode of Simply Wonderful Vegetarian Cooking. I'm going to go over a little bit of the hardware with you. Actually, this pretty much covers all the hardware I use. Maybe a couple things here and there, but this is basically it. You're going to need a nice stew pot. I believe that's 12 quarts. A pot for cooking rice, about this size. Another nice size pot for cooking. Also has a steamer insert. If you don't have a steamer insert, I can show you how to do it without it. You're going to need some containers for putting ingredients. So we have a couple different sizes there. You're going to need a knife, a cutting board, measuring cup. This is a strainer. I use a couple different size spoons. Usually I like to have about 2 of these tablespoons with me when I'm cooking, and I also have a large spoon to stir, large things. Peeler, teaspoon measuring. Now I don't use these a whole lot. I go a lot on intuition, and I'll tell you what spices to, that you can pretty much go, because they're pretty mild spices, and then there are some spices that are not mild. You're going to want to watch it. You're going to want to use a measuring thing. And this is a small baking container. Now I'm not going to be using this today, but this is a wok, standard wok. Now all these pots here, they're really not that expensive. Probably the least expensive ones that you can get at your major superstore, but I would suggest getting stainless steel and not aluminum. So that pretty much covers it for hardware. Now, I like to use these sanitizer wipes to keep everything nice and clean, keep my counters clean. And we got pure citrus spray. Spray in there, make everything smell really nice. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to go over and go over some of the major ingredients that I'm always using. After that, we're going to go ahead and get into the kitchen. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the main ingredients that I'm using pretty much every single time I cook. First, I'll go over the spices. Now, the spices I have pretty much you will find at the Indian store. If you don't have an Indian store near you, you can get the curry powder. I know the one at Walmart. They sell one at Walmart. It's a curry powder, and it's all organic, and there is no onions in it or garlic, so you can use it for offering. So these are the spices. I get them at the Indian store. Mustard seeds is pretty much one of my favorite things to use. You do have to use this properly, and I will show you how to do that. And if you don't, they end up tasting really bitter. So you're going to want to use that properly. Garam masala. This is garam masala is a really mild spice. I mean, it's very tasty, but it's very mild. You can get away with, just eyeballing how much you're going to put in there. Coriander is the same way. Coriander powder. You can pretty much just put as much as you want. You don't want to overdo it, obviously, but it doesn't need to be exact because it's a mild spice. It's not going to ruin your food if you don't put the exact amount in. Now, cumin seeds, I do use cumin seeds. I don't use very much because it's a very potent seed. The taste is very potent, so I just use very little of it. Now, these last 3 here, you're definitely going to want to use a measuring cup, measuring teaspoon cup to use. This is chili pepper. Obviously, if you put too much chili pepper in it, it's not going to be palatable at all. So you have to basically really meter how much chili pepper you're going to put in there. It is good to put in there. It makes everything delicious, but if you put too much, then it's unpalatable. Turmeric, this will make things very bitter if you put too much in it. You put the right amount in it, it adds a nice flavor to your food. If you put too much, you're not going to want it. It's going to be very unpalatable. And this is asafoetida, also known as hing. And this is a garlic and onion substitute. It has the same potent kind of flavor as garlic onions, but it's a little bit more mild, and you're definitely going to want to monitor how much of this you put in there too, because if you put in too much, it'll ruin everything. Okay, so that's pretty much all for the spices. Obviously, I'm using sugar all the time. Salt, lemon juice. I like to use lemon juice in a lot of my sauces, stews. This is heavy cream. I use that in my major base of my stew. Yogurt, major basin stew. Now this is where the rubber meets the road here. This is butter. I'm going to show you how to make ghee out of this, and this is what turns regular cooking into fantastic cooking when you use ghee. It makes everything delicious. I use it in basically every single one of my sauces. So that's the butter. I'm going to show you how to make ghee today. And for the fresh ingredients, I'm constantly using these. Pretty much every time I make a sauce, every time I make a base for a stew, I'm using these ingredients. Coconut, ginger, and serrano peppers. Now you can also use jalapenos and serrano. They pretty much intertwine together pretty nicely. And this is cilantro. I use cilantro in every single vegetable dish I cook, pretty much. So that basically covers the ingredients I'm using every day. Obviously I'm using vegetables, different vegetables, and today we're going to make a stew. It's going to be coconut, mung bean, and butternut squash along with spinach. So it's my stew I'm making all the time. I usually make enough, you know, to last about 3 or 4 meals. So I'll meet you over in the kitchen. Okay, so my kitchen's all cleaned up. I got clean clothes on. I'm not wearing any shoes in the kitchen. My floor is mopped, my floor is swept, and I'm ready to start cooking. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is make ghee. Like I said, that's where this cooking becomes fantastic. When it, you know, it makes it a lot different from using vegetable oil. Ghee is where it's at. So we're gonna make ghee first off. Okay, while we're doing that, we're gonna put the ghee on, get the ghee started. We're gonna get the mung beans going because those take about the longest to cook in making the stew. We're also gonna get the rice prepared. We're not gonna start cooking the rice yet because it's a little bit too early. Rice only takes about 10-12 minutes, and we still got about an hour cooking to do before we're done with the stew. So let's go ahead and get the butter on in there. Just cut it into squares. And this is 3 pounds of butter, by the way. That's a good amount. 3 pounds is plenty. You'll see it comes out, you know, I can fill up two mason jars full of ghee, and that'll last quite a while. We'll have plenty for today and plenty for about 3-4 meals. We're going to get started here. And you want to put this at about medium heat, especially till the butter gets melted. Once the butter gets melted, we can bring the heat up maybe a little bit, but we don't want it too high in the beginning because that could be problematic. If it doesn't have a nice base of butter on the bottom, you're going to have problems because it'll start burning. Okay, so that's melting down nice. We'll go ahead and grab the mung beans. Got our measuring cup here. We're going to go ahead and take 1 cup of mung beans. And 1 cup is actually a good amount of mung beans. That's plenty for a nice stew. I'm going to go ahead and wash them in the sink. Grab my strainer, strain them out. Okay, put them in the pot there. And I just go ahead and fill up the pot with water. Well, it depends on what size pot you have, but you know, you want it to be a nice couple inches of water on top of them because it does take a little bit of time for them to boil down. Okay, all our butter is melted down here, so we're gonna go ahead and bring the heat up a little bit. Try to get it boiling here. You know, you don't want it to be violently bubbling, obviously. Okay, we got our mung beans prepared here. We'll go ahead and get those on. Josh, toasty marani. And those can go on as high as your stove goes, because you're just going to want those to boil down. Take a little while. I want my pot to be real clean. This is going to be my rice pot, so we're going to go ahead and get rice prepared here. This is basmati rice. That's the only way to fly, as far as I'm concerned. No other rice has got anything on basmati. It's the best. So let's go ahead and get about 1.5 cups. That's what I usually like to do, 1.5 cups at a time. For my stew, I'll go 1.5 cups. That's about, covers about 3 meals or so worth of rice. So now I want to go ahead and wash my rice. I'm going to make sure my rice is real clean. I'm going to wash it 3 times. Okay, on my last one, I'm going to go ahead and take a spoon here. Stir it around a little bit. Get it nice and clean. Dump it out. So we got 1.5 cups of rice there. So now with rice, however much you put in there, you just want to double it. So we put 1.5, so we're going to do 4 cups of water. It's 2. Okay. Got 3 cups of water there. Okay. I usually like to put a little turmeric in my rice. Put a little bit of salt. Like I said, I go on intuition a lot. I don't. Let's say for this, 1.5 cups, I put about 1 teaspoon of turmeric. You want to watch it on turmeric because you don't want to put too much. It'll make things taste bitter. Like I said earlier. So about 1 teaspoon. That's plenty. Give a little bit of a stir. I have some ghee from earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. I like to put some ghee in my rice. So I'll go ahead and cover that up because I'm not going to be cooking that for a little bit. That's basically what we're looking like here. You want to get a nice, rigorous boil. It's coming along. It's not done yet. When it's done, it'll be golden. And of course, that's coming along too. Okay, so we got everything rolling along here nicely. Ghee's probably about 5-6 minutes away from being done. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of cut up done for my stew. So after you're done peeling your ginger, this is what you want it to look like. You don't want there to be any brown spots or anything. It should all be yellow. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut it all up. I usually like to just get it down into little slices and then manageable slices here. And then we're gonna go ahead and fine chop it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and dice it up. You wanna get this really finely chopped. The serrano peppers, it's not so important, but I like to get my ginger really finely chopped. That way it kind of disintegrates into the ghee, into the saute, rather than having big pieces of ginger in your stew. This way you have more of a, it kind of disintegrates into it and gives the whole saute the ginger flavor. And this is accomplished easier when it's very finely chopped. So our ghee is coming along here. We've got a nice boil going on here, but it's not done yet. What it's doing is it's cooking off the butter fats. So you're left with an oil that's actually, you can fry in it. Basically, if you tried to fry things in butter, you'd have a difficult time. It doesn't work well because of the butter fats. But once you cook off these butter fats, then you can fry in it. You can fry just like, you'd fry anything else. If you were to make French fries or anything, you can do that. With ghee, you'll make a lot better French fries too. Because ghee is just, makes everything tastier. Okay, so we're getting there now. At this point you can kind of turn the temperature down a little bit. I like to just kind of roll it around a little, see how it's cooking on the bottom. Yeah, I want to turn my temperature down. This ghee is almost done. We'll give that a couple more minutes just to burn off a little bit more of the fats. Okay, I like that. That's done. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off. That's not going to cook anymore. I'll give it a minute just to kind of cool down a little bit before I start handling it, because I got to kind of do some manipulating with it. The strainer definitely has to be hot, but you don't want to just take it right off. Just wait a couple minutes. My mung beans are moving right along. This is basically the consistency you want the ginger. You want it pretty fine. I'm going to go ahead and set this ginger aside. So for the final processing on this ghee, what I'm going to need is a strainer, paper towel, and something to catch the ghee. So if you see, that's my consistency of my ghee right there. It's golden. It's not, it used to be cloudy and now it's completely golden. So we're gonna go ahead and just slowly drop this ghee into the paper towel and strainer and let it run through there. So it steadily runs through. Sometimes it goes faster than others. This time it's going pretty steadily here. Once it gets low, you just pour more in it. That'll speed it up because of the, it's heavier on it, so speeds it up. So now I'll just want to kind of help it along. I mean, it is still hot, so you don't want to be completely sticking your hands in it because it will burn you. But, if you manipulate it right, you won't get burned. see here. Like I'm just grabbing the kind of paper towel that doesn't have any kind of ghee on it. Now just kind of help the rest of it through. You don't want to, see, it is hot. You don't want to squeeze it too hard, because see, what you have in there is some milk fats that is left over. So you kind of want to get as much ghee as you can out of it. I already have a container for my ghee. I like to use mason jars. So this is my ghee container. Ghee doesn't really go bad. It doesn't go bad at all, so you can keep it out. I like to keep it sealed. And this is probably the biggest trick here, is try to get it in there without spilling it. So, I mean, if you have a different container, I don't know, I just try to test myself here. If you have the patience and you concentrate, you can do it without spilling. There we go. I spilled a little bit, but very little. So I'll cover that up. It comes with a plastic seal, but it's way too hot to put the plastic seal on at this point. I have another container that I put my frying ghee in, so I'm going to just go ahead and put the rest of this in there. We're not going to be frying anything today. Okay, so I'll set this back up here, and we're moving along here. So I'm just going to go there. I really don't like to waste ghee because it's so delicious. So there's a kind of a, you know, layer of milk fat on the bottom. What I'll do is I'll just put this in some hot water, because I'm going to need this pot to cook my stew. So I'm going to have to clean that out, but I'll just let it soak in hot water and it'll come right out in about 5 minutes. So we got the ghee prepared. Now we're going to do some cut up, finish the rest of our cut up. Maybe I'll just go with the ginger and serranos are kind of like, I always use them together. I always cut them together. They kind of go together. They're just kind of like brothers, sisters, you know? So they are always used at the same time. So I kind of, when I get them all cut up and everything, I just kind of mix them together. So I'll go ahead and cut these serranos up. You're going to want to have somewhere you can get out of your kitchen, because you are going to be probably, if you're like me, sneezing and coughing when you're cutting these. Well, not cutting them, but more pitting them. This is where the sneezing and coughing comes in. So I got them all cut in half here. Now I'm just gonna bring them over to my sink. I'll throw them in like a yogurt container here. Bring them over to my sink and pit them. I got them right here. I'm gonna go ahead and use cold water, grab them and get all those seeds out of there. I'll show you a completed product when I got it finished here. These serranos really aren't that strong, because usually I would be running for the door by now. Yeah, that's amazing, because usually I would at least have to hit the door one time. You don't want to be coughing in your kitchen. Okay, so I got them all peeled. We'll go ahead and we don't want to mix them with the seeds here. If you got any seeds on your cutting board, go ahead and get those off there. So this is your finished product after you got them over the sink. You got all the seeds out, you're going to come out like that. I'm going to go ahead and check my mung bean. Like I said, I like to use one of these tablespoons just to move things around while I'm cooking. You grab a mung bean, just okay, they're getting there. They're still a little bit hard, but when they are completely done, they will be basically soft. They will turn into like a soupy consistency. I usually like to pull them out. You don't want to overcook them. I usually like to pull them out just when you can touch them. Grab them like this here, and they just completely smash. You know they're done. So like I said, the serranos, you don't really need to be as fine as the ginger. I mean, you want them fine. You don't want to have huge pieces of pepper in your stew. But They don't need to be completely chopped up. They will cook into your saute. They will cook into the ghee without any difficulty. So for those of you that are offering your food, like I did make a whole video on offering. For those of you that are offering, I usually like to keep, if you're in a house where there's a lot going on, there's nothing going on in my house right now, but if there's a lot going on, I like to have earplugs just so that I could, you know, not be disturbed. You want to, for those offering, you want to kind of leave your cell phone out of the kitchen. You know, you don't want to have music blasting or getting disturbed all the time. You want to kind of be a meditation, you know? And sometimes you just can't accomplish that. If there's a lot going on in your house, I like to have earplugs so that I can just kind of, you know, bring the noise level down a little bit. See here, I'm going to check on my mung beans here a little bit, just stir them up. Still need a little bit more, but they're getting there. Yeah, so the mung beans are getting there. They're about 6-7 minutes away from being done. Now you can easily replace mung beans with lentils too. I've done that before. It comes out fantastic. Other beans I'm not really sure of. I think I've used split pea beans before. I like mung beans, and if I don't use mung beans, I'll generally use lentils. So I got my serranos down to a nice fine consistency here. You know, they don't need to be as fine as the ginger, but you want to have them cut up pretty good. And I'll go ahead and set these off to the side. So yeah, cutting them up. It's getting to me a little bit, but almost to the point I have to go out and cough, but not quite, which is unusual because usually I have to cough at least once. That's coming along right. Your mung beans will start to completely fall apart when they are finished. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and cut up my potatoes. I usually use about 3 potatoes. Like I said, this is enough to cook. I mean, this is enough for a good family, large family to eat. I usually, after it's offered, I'll eat it, and it's about 4 days worth of food, 3-4 days. So my mung beans are coming along here. I think that's about it. We got it done here. Maybe 1 more minute, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. Check my mung beans again here. Another minute or so. Get my potatoes cut up here. I like to use 3 nice sized potatoes. I like to cut them nice large pieces. Okay, now that I got my potatoes all cut up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start my saute, which is also known as a chance. So I'm going to go ahead and take my ghee. We're going to use a nice generous amount of ghee for this. I usually like to just eyeball it, but I like to use a lot because we're going to cook a good amount of stew here, enough for a good family here. So that's about how much I'm going to use. Okay, so the first ingredient we're going to put in the saute is the mustard seeds, because we have to actually sputter the mustard seeds. They have to pop or else they'll be very bitter. I like to use a good amount. I'm going to go ahead and say I'll put about 1/4 cup. I have my ginger and my serrano all prepared. That's going to be my next step, is I'm going to put ginger and serrano in it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn on the heat here. Tulsi Maharani. You can go ahead and put it on high. I also have my coconut right handy too. I have my coconut handy because that's going to be my 3rd ingredient. So this is going to take about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes until the ghee gets hot enough where it's actually going to make the mustard seeds start to sputter. You're going to want to have a lid handy, and you want to make sure it's dry because oil and water don't mix. If there's any water on here and you put this over here, it's going to be a violent reaction. So I like to just keep it right here. You hear that? They're starting to sputter. Now this ghee is really hot right now. As hot as I can get it. They're starting to sputter now. Now when you're using a lot of ghee like this, you really don't, I mean, it's not going to be as violent. You're not going to have them popping out. But if you use less ghee, which is sometimes you have to, so maybe you just don't have a lot of ghee on you, they're going to sputter more. You're going to need to have a handy. Like right now, I don't even really need the lid, but I'm just going to put it on there. So you just got to keep a listen out for when they stop sputtering. Okay, which is right about now. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my heat down to low, and I'm going to add my ginger and serrano. What the ginger and serrano is going to do is it's going to cool off the ghee. So basically you're going to bring that ghee down to temperature, a tame temperature. So now you can kind of regulate, you can meter exactly how hot you want this saute to be. So I'm going to bring it up to medium, and then I'm going to add my coconut. You're basically going to completely saturate the coconut. I like to shake it, just even it out. And so medium right here is really, it's not as hot as I want it really. But I don't want to get it too hot because we're not trying to burn the coconut. What we're trying to do is cook the coconut, ginger, and serrano into the ghee. We're trying to cook the flavor of it in there. So I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I've got about a medium high here. You just have to meter it. The coconut's going to be the thing that's going to be most tender, the most susceptible to burning. So you just want to bring it up to a nice temperature, get a nice boil going on, nice saute, but you don't want it too hot. And if you see the coconut starting to brown too quickly, you're going to want to turn it down a little bit. So that's a nice temperature there. I'm just going to regularly stir it around a little bit and let that cook, let that saute for a little bit. So I'm satisfied with it. It's probably going to be about, I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get my cut up done. I got some a red cabbage here I'm going to add to the stew. And I'm also going to keep on monitoring this. I want to make sure temperature's not too hot. So I really want it to cook in there. That's going to give the whole stew the flavor. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. So I just like to roughly shred my cabbage. Doesn't have to be, I actually like big pieces. And you know, it's going to shrink a little bit inside the stew. The cabbage is going to be the first vegetable that's going to go into the stew after my saute is done. But I'm going to put it in the steamer for about 6-7 minutes, just so I don't have to cook it inside the cream sauce. You know, just cook it in the steamer. Works out pretty good. The sequence of the way I do it usually is once my saute is done, I'll put my mung beans into the stew. And then I'll use this, I'll put the steamer inside there, and I'll put the cabbage in and start steaming it for 6 or 7 minutes while I'm building my cream sauce. And after that, after my cabbage is done, I put it in there. Then I'll put my spinach in. And at the same time, I'll take my harder vegetables, my carrots, my potatoes, my butternut squash, and I'll steam them as well. That'll take about 10 minutes. And then that's about it. We're going to add some lemon juice after that. So at this point, I'm not really going to be cooking this ginger, serrano, and coconut very much more. I really don't want to overcook the cumin seeds. They cook kind of quick. So, you know, towards the end, I'll just put in my cumin seeds. I don't usually put very much. Put about a teaspoon in a large stew like this. Yeah, maybe a teaspoon and a half. And I'll let those roast a little bit in there. I'm keeping generally all my hard vegetables, my carrots, my potatoes, I'm keeping them nice size, nice hearty bites. Okay, so I can tell that my serranos are well cooked into the saute here. My coconut's turned a little bit brown. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and roast the actual spices in here. Okay, so the first main spice I'm going to add is garam masala. Garam masala is a real mild spice. You can kind of eyeball it. Let's say about a 1/4 cup again. I mean, it's a delicious spice. There's a lot of flavor in it, but it's not a flavor that's gonna, you know, overpower or anything. I'm gonna add my coriander powder. Same thing, about a 1/4 cup. Now turmeric I'm gonna measure out because you don't want to add too much turmeric. I'd say about 2 teaspoons. 2 heaping teaspoons. That's a good amount. Chili pepper I'm definitely gonna measure out here. So we're going to do 1 heaping teaspoon of chili pepper. And that'll about do it for chili pepper. You don't want to overdo it with chili pepper. And I'm going to go ahead and stir these up and let the spices roast a little bit in ghee. And I got it about a little bit lower than medium. So we're just going to let this roast for about a minute here. So that's it for the spices. Some people get more extravagant with their spicing. I think that's fine. Coriander, garam masala, a little bit of chili pepper, turmeric. Okay, so now we're going to take a pint of heavy cream, turn it into a cream sauce. I'm going to go ahead and take a large container of yogurt here, Dannon plain yogurt, add it as well. So that'll give me a nice thick stew base. I'm going to go and bring my temperature up to about a little under medium. Now from this point I'm ready. Go ahead and put my mung beans in, which are all ready. I'm going to add the mung beans. So I'll add a little bit of water to my steam pot here. Add the inserts. We're going to put the cabbage in. Cover it up and turn it on high. Now at this point I'll generally add a little bit of water, you know, because it's going to be pretty thick. Add a little bit of water. Okay, and at this point I can pretty much turn on my rice because we're getting pretty close here. So I'll turn my rice on high. You want to uncover it. We're waiting for a boil on that rice. Got my lemon juice. I'm going to add about a 1/2 cup of lemon juice. And it's not really thick. I mean, it is thick. It's a stew kind of consistency, but it's not terribly thick. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat up a little bit because I want to heat it up a little bit. Now I've been using the pre-washed spinach. Generally, when you buy bunches of spinach, you're going to want to wash it at least a couple times because it generally will have sand in it. This has already been washed like 3 times, but I still wash it one more time. So I'll go ahead and wash it and just take handfuls of it and put it in the stew. I'll just kind of dunk it a little bit in the stew. Once I get it all in there, I'll go ahead and take my spoon and I'll go ahead and kind of work it in there. Spinach does not take long to cook. I mean, you want your stew hot at this point. You don't want it boiling because your spinach will disintegrate the more you cook it on, you know, the higher heat. The more intensely you cook it, the more it's going to disintegrate. So you want the spinach to be nice and hearty in your stew. So keep the temperature kind of nice, but it doesn't need to be boiling when you put the spinach in. The spinach is going to cook. The less intensely you cook it, the more it's going to be nice hearty spinach in your stew. So I got the heat on about medium-high right now on the stew. And I don't see any boiling really going on. Once it starts to, boil a little bit, I'll turn it down. First signs of a boil, I'll turn it down. Now on your rice, you want to give it a nice stir. It's going to take a few minutes to come to a boil. You want the lid to be off. Now from this point on, I'm not really cooking anything in my stew. I'm just adding steamed vegetables that have already been cooked. So I don't really need it extremely hot. The spinach is going to cook. So I'm going to go ahead and get my cilantro prepared. I got a nice hearty amount of cilantro here. So we're going to do it in 2 batches. Do it in 1 batch. And all the time I'm keeping an eye on my cabbage. Doesn't take long to cook cabbage. By the time I'm done with this cilantro, that cabbage will be ready to put in the stew. Now those of you that are offering, if you have animals while you're cooking, it's best to keep them out of the kitchen. I like to put a nice little barrier. Keep all the animals out after I've mopped, swept and mopped, cleaned everything. Don't really want the dog running through here, so I got the cilantro to a nice consistency here. I'm gonna go ahead and add it to the stew. It's a leafy vegetable. It has the same consistency as spinach, so it's going to, take on the characteristics of spinach. Okay, so to test my cabbage here, I'm just gonna grab a piece. Yeah, that's definitely ready. So we'll just go ahead and turn it off for now. Okay, so I'm going to take my cabbage here, put it in the stew as well. Okay, that's in there. Now I'm ready to add my potatoes. And carrots. Now I'm going to turn the heat back on high. Make sure it's in there nice. Yeah, there we go. Alright. So I'll give my rice a stir here. It's coming to a boil here. Not quite yet, but... Now my butternut squash I like to keep in nice big chunks, so that way there's nice big chunks of butternut squash in your stew. It really comes out nice. So the carrots and potatoes should take about, 7-8 minutes to cook, maybe 9 minutes. At this point I'll go ahead and put the finishing touches on my stew. This is sugar. I'll go ahead and add about 3/4 of a cup sugar. This is my asafoetida. So this is going to be about good heaping teaspoon. And my rice here has come to a boil. That's a nice boil. So what I'm going to do is bring it down. It's on high right now. I'm going to bring it down to about a little under medium and cover it. And just keep an eye on that. Now when offering your food, generally don't taste it before it's offered. So I go on smell a lot. Add a little bit more hing. You want to actually smell the hing. It's a garlic and onion substitute, so it's got a pretty potent smell. Okay, yeah, I kind of smell it in there now. I'll go ahead and add salt. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of salt. This is a good amount of food here, so I'm going to keep an eye on my rice here. That's about how I want it. You want to see little bubbles coming up from it. Yeah, so you're actually steaming the rice. It's not really boiling, it's actually steaming. I'm gonna steam the water out of it. I usually like to test it, just take a knife and just see if I can cut through it. You should be able to take a knife and just go right through it. Okay, well everything's spiced, so I can go ahead and put my spices away. I like to just start, straightening up. I could pretty much lower my stew now. I'm not cooking anything in it and it's nice and hot, so I'm gonna go ahead and just put it on low. It doesn't really need to cook anymore. I'm just waiting to add my vegetables here. The whole time I want to keep an eye on my rice. Now what I usually do is I'll take my tablespoon here and I'll just lift it up real quick and just feel how it's doing on the bottom. Just take the spoon and take it all the way to the bottom so you can kind of feel it. If it's like kind of sticking to the bottom because it's too hot, you'll be able to tell, and you just turn the heat down. Right now this is moving along pretty well. You even take a piece of potato out. I do that sometimes. Just take it out. Okay, we're getting there. Maybe about 2-3 minutes. Such nice colors in there. Very, very colorful. Got the nice red cabbage, the spinach. And when I add the carrots, you have the orange too, the butternut squash. Really beautiful stew. Okay, so I felt like it was kind of sticking a little bit on the bottom, so I'm just going to lower the heat. We're getting really close to being done anyways. I'm going to put it on about medium-low, closer to low. And how do you test the rice and know it's done? Just take a couple grains, squeeze them between your hands. Like that's done. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. It'll keep on cooking. As long as you keep the lid on it, it's going to keep on cooking a little bit. Okay, so I'm pretty sure my carrots and potatoes are done here. I'm just going to grab a carrot, cut it. Oh yeah, it's plenty done. So I'll go ahead and turn that off. Just going to go ahead and add my carrots and potatoes to my stew. Add my nice chunks of butternut squash. Nice sized chunks of butternut squash. Maybe these two are a little bit big, so I'll go ahead and cut them to about that size. Put them on in there. Really beautiful with the carrots. Cabbage. So as I'm preparing my plate for my offering here, I want to make sure I get a nice amount of spinach, nice amount of carrots. I'll try to get an even amount of everything. I'm going to go ahead and save a little room because I'm going to add a piece of butternut squash on top of that. Go ahead and get some rice. Scoop it out here. Take some spinach, put it on top here. Nice amount of spinach. Yeah, you should be able to just take a knife and just stick it right through it, and then you know it's done. Okay, I'm going to check my butternut squash one more time. Yep, I stuck my knife right through it, so it looks like it's done. I'm just going to go ahead and add these pieces here into the stew itself. Leave one out to put on the offering. Thanks for tuning in to Simply Wonderful Vegetarian Cooking. That's my mung bean, coconut, spinach, potato, carrot, and butternut squash stew. As you can see, there's plenty there. Feed a nice family, almost 2 meals. We have a nice offering here for the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and offer it. Okay, so go ahead and tune in next week. I'm going to go ahead and make my vegetable fritters with you, fried vegetable fritters in delicious ghee. It's going to be eggplant along with freshly made cheese called paneer. So you're going to see how to make that as well. They're actually fantastic. Everybody loves them that tastes them. I'm also going to make a mango chutney, a mango sauce with a little bit of coconut. So it's going to be real fun, and I hope you can join me. We're going to have a lot of fun. And thanks. Tune in next week.